You're listening to the Wedding Biz Network, the voice of the creative entrepreneur. Hey everyone, it's Andy Kushner with the Wedding Biz. And if you are listening to the Wedding Biz for the first time, I welcome you. We've been doing this for over 3 years and are up to almost 300 super dynamic interviews of some of the best wedding and event professionals in the world. If you are a returning listener, welcome back, and I thank you so much for your loyalty. So today is a special episode in that I have two very highly respected guests at one time, and that's Amanda Hearst and MICAELA Erlanger. Amanda Hearst is co-founder and chief brand officer of Maison De Mode. She is also an activist, the co-founder of Well-Beings, a next-gen movement that brings attention and action to the interconnection between animal welfare and climate change. She is also a member of the 2020 CFDA Fashion Awards Guild and holds a seat on the advisory board of Nest, a nonprofit committed to the advancement of global artisans. Amanda previously worked as a market editor at Marie Claire and is currently a contributing editor at Town & Country magazine. Our other guest is a sought-after celebrity stylist, MICAELA Erlanger, and she has been profiled in numerous publications. The Hollywood Reporter has repeatedly named her one of the most powerful stylists. Her clientele includes Meryl Streep, Lupita Nyong'o, Diane Kruger, and Shailene Woodley. In 2019, MICAELA launched her bridal styling business, focusing on styling and consulting to brides, bridal brands, and luxury hospitality groups. Since then, she has launched an engagement ring and wedding band collection with Forevermark diamonds and partnered with Brideside on a curated capsule of wedding gowns. MICAELA is also the author of How to Accessorize, a perfect finish to every outfit. And together, Amanda and MICAELA talk about their process of working together to style Amanda's outfits and jewelry for her extended wedding weekend, as well as the aspects of sustainability that were considered and incorporated. Amanda makes an exciting announcement at the end about a certain new product line that will be launched within days. Very exciting. So enjoy this fun and dynamic conversation with Amanda Hearst and MICAELA Erlanger. Amanda and MICAELA, it is so exciting to have both of you on the show at the same time. Welcome.
Thank you for having us, Andy.
Yeah, very welcome. And Amanda, I understand that this is your first time on a podcast. I'm privileged and honored, I must say.
Yes, my first time on a podcast, listening to a podcast, anything in the podcast world. This is the first.
Wow. All right.
Yeah.
Well, when you discover them, you're going to love it. And MICAELA, you have been on before. You were on episode 259. So welcome back.
All right. Thank you. It's a pleasure.
Oh, yeah. And I got great response on that. So that was a great one. So, basically what I want to talk to you both about is the process of how you both work together, planning your wedding, Amanda, in terms of the gowns and dresses and with particular attention to sustainability. First of all, how did you both meet? How did this start?
Well, so actually, I was already starting the planning of my wedding, and I knew that I wanted to wear an Oscar de la Renta dress. And so I was meeting with the designer, and he was like, no pressure, but there's a stylist that I work with, and she's amazing, and she's starting a bridal consulting agency, and, she'd be interested in working with you. And I was like, okay, well, I'll meet with her and we'll see what it is. And at first I was like, what does that even mean? Why would someone need styling for a wedding? It's just one dress and it's a white dress. I don't know. I just had no idea about anything. And then the more I spoke with MICAELA, and then when we started working together, I was like, oh my God, I could not have done this without a stylist. There's so many elements, and MICAELA will elaborate, but the wedding is very much like a photo shoot.
Yeah.
And, and the photos from the wedding are very much your memories from the wedding. And you want to look beautiful in the photos. You want the clothing to translate in the images. You want your bridal party to look nice. And so MICAELA really handled all of that for me, from the photography to obviously what I wore, and even to what my mother wore and what my husband's daughters wore. So, it ended up being a production, and I definitely am so grateful that she helped.
God, that's really wonderful. And MICAELA, what about when you got the call? How did you feel?
Oh, I was so excited. Amanda was actually the first bride that I ever got to work with. And it was an honor, and it was such a fun process and so exciting to to collaborate with her on her wedding. And, it happened so organically, I have to say. Like, I think just like with any other client that I might have, like in the celebrity and red carpet world, like you have to have a natural synergy with the person that you're working with, and you have to have some sort of connection. And I felt that instantly with Amanda. So things really went off without a hitch, but it was so fun to be able to work so comprehensively on her wedding across wardrobe, and really to be given the trust and freedom to collaborate with the other members on, the designing and planning team to really execute everything flawlessly.
So can you give me a little bit more detail about the process? Like, Amanda, I understand that the whole concept was new for you, working with someone like MICAELA. So how did it start? I mean, had you already I understand you met with the designer. Did you already have some particular gowns, dresses in mind? What was your concept going into this?
So I had met with the designer, Fernando Garcia, and I had talked to him a bit about what I was thinking, tried on some silhouettes, and explained to him that whatever I wore, I wanted it to be sustainable. So that was about as far as the conversation had gone before MICAELA got involved. And that's when we started then talking more about silhouette, what would be flattering, what would be comfortable, how to make it sustainable. Yeah, and I think that the sustainability was somewhat new for MICAELA. So that was also a learning curve that we went on together.
That was one of the most exciting challenges of working in this capacity with Amanda, because I've made countless dresses over the years, but to have a focus on making sure that there was a sustainable element and story and thread through every aspect of what Amanda was wearing, literally from head to toe, jewelry included, shoes included. It was so important. And the research involved was something that, I had done before, but to apply it to the bridal market was so new and so exciting. And of course came with its own set of challenges, but made the process really amazing. So actually after we were introduced, we started with the main dress. And the main dress, I find that typically that is the place to start, because it kind of sets the tone for the rest of your events. And it was so interesting. Collaborating with Oscar de la Renta was amazing. They were able to source sustainable silk from the Tironi mill in Italy, which was extraordinary, and which was ultimately the fabric that was used to produce Amanda's gown. And then we repurposed boning from another dress to create the corset. So from full perspective, the entire dress was completely sustainably made.
Can I interrupt just for a minute, just to interject? Yeah. For people listening who may not know exactly what sustainable even means,
sure.
Could you describe that?
Amanda, all you.
Yeah. So usually how I describe sustainable fashion is fashion that takes into account the environment and or the people that make it. So there's a social impact component, and there can be a social or an environmental component as well. The three questions that I usually ask when shopping sustainably is: who made it? Where did it come from? And what is it made of? So those are like the three categories that you can go into, and the starting point of what sustainability is.
Yeah, that's helpful.
Those three elements, and then even beyond, were considered in every single dress and element or detail, accessory that Amanda wound up wearing. And sourcing those things was, such a process in and of itself, finding the perfect item, and also learning about the history of the item, or exactly where it came from, who made it, whose hands have touched it, what are the ethics behind it, was really empowering and pretty incredible. So, you ask about process. It was a lengthy process in the sense that there were many steps taken to sort of get to that place, to get to the place where we were able to choose from the selection of, various items. Because Amanda had more than one dress. We started with the main look, and then there was everything else, because you were getting married over a weekend with lots of festivities.
Oh, and that was the other fun part, is that originally I was only thinking, oh, well, it's just one dress that you wear. And then working with MICAELA, and then taking into account, well, you can borrow clothing and that's also sustainable. So then it ended up opening the doors for me to be like, yes, I love this. I love that, And so then we ended up with a bunch of beautiful dresses, each with their own unique, sustainable story. And obviously it was just a fun experience as a woman to be able to wear so many beautiful gowns.
And by the way, I mean, in the show notes are just incredible photos, of you in these various dresses and the main gown, and absolutely stunning. Can you both give some more details about not only the main gown, but the other dresses and at what points in the wedding? I mean, obviously you timed them as well, for certain points during the reception to change. Can you give all those details?
Yeah, I mean, we can go through, honestly, I think there were about 6 dresses that we wore.
Oh, there were that many? Okay.
Yeah, because the wedding was Thursday, Friday. It was 3 days.
Yeah.
And 2 locations. So it was Hearst Castle, and then we went to the Chateau Marmont. Mm-hmm. So the overall idea of it was a tale of 2 castles, is what we called it. And it was because obviously, Hearst Castle and then Chateau, they're both castles in their own way. And they both carry personal significance to my husband and I. So we wanted to create kind of this Californian experience for the guests. And then working with MICAELA, we wove the outfits in. So just like, I guess, the run of show of the wedding, it started on a Thursday and we swam in the Neptune pool.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, which is a very beautiful location.
Just the name of that, the Neptune pool. I love it.
Yeah. So the guests and I, we all swam in there, and that was the first look. And I'll let MICAELA explain what I wore.
Okay.
Yeah. So Amanda wore a dress from Cult Gaia, which is a sustainable and ethical brand based in LA. Also female run, and female owned, which was really important to mention, and something that we also considered throughout this process. Again, who made it, right? Whose hands have touched this, and who's behind the brand is important, I think, in the conversation of sustainability, just as much as what something is made of. So she wore Cult Gaia and a vintage handkerchief scarf. We really sort of channeled, this Grace Kelly sort of 1950s inspired vibe. And she borrowed a pair of sunglasses from one of her friends who has an eyewear company, and a pair of sustainably made espadrille sandals from Spain that had all natural materials. And that was the first look, and it was so perfect, and it fit the setting so beautifully. And I had worked closely with David Mon, who planned the wedding prior to this, to make sure I had a sense of course, what the flow of the event was and what time of day certain activities would be happening, so that, you're dressing for the occasion and you have the proper attire and dress code. But it was perfect. And then from there, you had your rehearsal dinner.
Yeah, because my husband's Norwegian, so we wanted the first night to speak to his Norwegian heritage. Mm-hmm. So there's a cabin on the Hearst Castle property, kind of this log cabin. So it looks like a Norwegian cabin, and we outfitted with flags and traditional Norwegian food and music and all of that. And so then MICAELA took that into account.
We found this incredible couture dress from Victor and Rolf, and it actually had this beautiful hand embroidered applique that kind of mimicked some of the traditional Norwegian flowers. When I had done my research about, I don't know, what the country's flowers were, what their colors were, what the flag looked like, and all of these different elements, wanting to find a way to weave that storytelling into the unexpected details was important. So this Victor and Rolf couture number was amazing. And couture is inherently sustainable because it is all made by hand. This happened to be a sample that Amanda was able to borrow as well. And borrowing and renting and this kind of concept, I think, is something that's really important. Weddings inherently are not very sustainable, right? They're one-time events. So being able to disseminate that message was really important. And this dress was a perfect way to do that. And we did it actually a few times. And then we also had sustainable jewelry. I think you wore Tiffany that evening. And obviously they're really ethical, and they're responsibly sourced diamonds and sapphires. And you had a pretty barrette in your hair, and it was perfect.
Yeah. And Amanda, in terms of when MICAELA refers to responsibly, sourced diamonds, can you explain what that is?
Well, so regarding Tiffany's, they own all their mines. So they have full transparency in terms of knowing like how the mines are run, who works there, how they're treated. They publish sustainability reports. So they're just a company that's been very open and transparent about how they operate. And owning your mines is a big deal because a lot of jewelry companies don't. And that's where the murkiness arises.
Yeah, negative impact on the environment and also labor and all of that.
Exactly.
I want to be sure you know about another great show on the Wedding Biz Network, The Business of Being Creative, with host Sean Lowe. You've often heard Sean on my Next Level episodes. Well, now he's taking the creative business advice he's shared with accomplished notables such as Preston Bailey, Vincente Wolf, Nate Berkus, Style Me Pretty, and Sylvia Weinstock, and more, and offering it to you on his new show. There are already a few episodes for you to catch up on where he discusses the power of being niched, pricing strategies, metrics of success, and so much more. So in short, you're going to gain a ton of value and action items from Sean's show, and you'll have the opportunity to talk back by recording messages of feedback from right there in the show notes. So if you are a creative who is turning your craft into a business or want to take it further, head to theweddingbiznetwork.com and take a listen to The Business of Being Creative by Sean Lowe. Again, that's theweddingbiznetwork.com. So I think you all described 4 dresses so far. I'm not sure, 3 or 4?
We're at 2.
Oh, we're only at 2.
No, well, 2 plus the wedding dress.
All right. So tell me about more.
So then the next day was Friday. And so that was the day of the wedding.
Okay.
So that was a private ceremony that we had in the back of, there are 3 guest houses at Hearst Castle. And one of them is called Casa del Sol. And so I had a private ceremony in the back of Casa del Sol, and it has this amazing view onto the Pacific Ocean. And it was just a ceremony with family and friends, and then, not even friends, actually just family. And then afterwards we joined the party. So MICAELA can explain a little bit about the main gown, which is what I wore that evening.
Okay.
Yeah, so that was spectacular. And we worked long and hard on that dress. It was the Oscar de la Renta gown I had described earlier, but it had this beautiful off-the-shoulder detail and this gorgeous floral applique. And what was so special was seeing it come to life and the jewelry, I think, that complemented it. We worked with Fred Layton to create a special brooch for the back of Amanda's hair. And it kind of looked like this beautiful garden had bloomed full of diamonds and vintage pieces that were truly one of a kind. And what I love about vintage is also the sustainability. You know, I believe that jewelry tells a story, but I also believe in this concept that vintage is to be passed down. It is to share a memory. It is, you know, there is a story to be told there. And what is old becomes new again. So we incorporated those pieces into Amanda's wedding attire. And she also wore vegan shoes, which was really cool. So the brand was Era, and they were these gorgeous slingbacks that were perfect for Amanda. And of course, Amanda being an animal lover and activist, was important for us to include that message as well. So,
wow, sounds amazing. It sounds
spectacular.
Oh yeah. So let's continue with the story. Then there's I believe you changed.
Well, actually, no. You want to know what was so cool? So Amanda stayed in this dress. So after the ceremony, you and your husband greeted guests in. How would you describe it, Amanda? You like opened the doors, you walked through the castle. Like how would you describe that moment?
Yeah. So the front of Hearst Castle, it's inspired by a Spanish basilica, and so it's these huge doors, and the doors opened, and we came out and kissed.
Yeah.
And so then it's like an open.
You had this moment where you greeted your guests and it was like the doors swung open and there they are being unveiled as husband and wife for the first time. And you sat to dinner, but you didn't take your veil off. Instead, we cut your veil. Her veil was cathedral length.
Okay.
and trimmed it on site, which might sound like a risky thing to do.
Yeah, it does.
We had an amazing seamstress and very sharp scissors, so it was fine.
Okay.
And a steady hand. But we trimmed the veil to be a fingertip veil. And that to me was such a subtle but elegant change, and it allowed Amanda to be dinner appropriate in her full look for her guests who hadn't seen her since the ceremony was so private, and to stay in her full look. So that was so special and that was so cool. And again, I think this idea of like being able to enjoy your outfit throughout the evening.
Yeah.
You know, instead of having something that you just wear on your head for a few hours, you got to enjoy it for the whole night. So that was dinner. And then came the party.
Yeah. And so then there's the dancing portion of the evening. And I definitely didn't want to still wear that gown because it was huge, sort of that princess shape. So then we switched into a more sleek, minimal number where I could actually just relax and have a drink and hang with my friends. And MICAELA can say a bit about that dress.
So at this point, it was important that we find something exactly that you could slip into something a little bit more comfortable, but was still elegant and glamorous. And for this, we went with Galvan, which is a female-owned, female-run business. And the dress was made of sustainably sourced silk as well. And she was able to keep the jewelry that she had for the entire evening on with all of her looks. And again, just telling that story and that common thread was so nice. But one of my favorite looks, I'd have to say, was probably the last look of the evening.
Yeah. And that one we couldn't decide, like, okay, we've done so many dresses already. Like, are we crazy to like, but there was this one dress we just loved and we're like, let's create a moment for this dress.
Yeah.
So we did.
Yeah, so we did.
So we called up David and we said, you know, we might need like a getaway car. We need a bon voyage moment. Can you make that happen? And anyway, it was the perfect moment. So Amanda changed into this beautiful Giambattista Valli couture little capelet chiffon dress it was actually printed. It wasn't white. It was red and white, which I also thought was so pretty and such a fun way to end the party, but still had like a bridal nod to it.
Mm-hmm.
And it was so perfect. It was your bon voyage moment. You jumped into the convertible and you sped off and then wound up in LA for your round two.
Yeah.
And then the final look was Oscar de la Renta again. And you wore Chopard jewelry, Chopard being another brand who has sustainable and ethical diamond mining processes. And it was just a party girl look. It was so perfect for Chateau Marmont. It had this detachable train. The whole look was also made from the sustainable silk from the Tironi mill. And it was amazing. And I think that those were all the outfits.
Yeah, exactly. The last look. So whereas like at the Hearst Castle, it was much more like classic, elegant, a lot of Grace Kelly references. The Chateau was like more of the Kate Moss moment, like messier hair, more sexy dress. And that was
much more Chateau.
Yeah, which was really fun also, like just to be able to play all these characters, you know, and have these different moods for every outfit and also like just so fitting for every venue.
Well, I'm also thinking about the environment that, I mean, we were mentioning how David Mon was the planner and the designer for your wedding, and David was on the show twice. I mean, he is, as you all know, his attention to detail and just the stunning, the emotion that he brings out.
Yeah.
I can just imagine.
It was a fairy tale.
Oh, and I can imagine these dresses, the outfits with the backdrop of what he creates. I mean, had to be stunning. So, Amanda, also, is there anything in particular you would suggest to brides about how to apply sustainability above and beyond what we've just spoken about, you know, for them to consider for their dresses for their wedding day?
In terms of the dresses, I think that the three recommendations would be to borrow, or the second one would be to talk to the designer and see if they can use materials from previous collections, upcycling, recycling. And then the third option would be buying a dress that's made of natural materials like silk, satin, pea silk, linen, things of that nature. So those are like the three categories of bridal that I think are the ones that I would recommend. Maybe the fourth also would be artisan made. So that goes a little bit more to the couture.
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I think that's kind of the ones that we covered and took into account, and definitely what I'd recommend to a bride.
And what can brides do after the wedding to contribute to sustainability?
Yeah, and that's another thing. And I actually, because I thought about that, I had 2 dresses that I actually, had custom made and owned. And I was like, what am I going to do with them afterwards?
Mm-hmm.
The one from the chateau I will wear, like that one was kind of okay. But the gown, I'm like, I'm definitely not going to be like cut it short and hope to wear it. Like that's just not going to happen. So I actually am still researching a little bit to figure out like what to do with that exactly. Because I was thinking maybe there are apps where you can give the dress like a rent the runway, but maybe for bridal. I don't know, Michaela, like I've been trying to research and it's been a little tricky actually.
I know you and I have a lot to catch up on.
Okay.
But, I would, to Amanda's point about the suggestions for sustainability, it ties back to this point right now. I think the idea of purchasing secondhand, these dresses have been worn once. That's nothing. That is such an opportunity to give someone something so beautiful and to give them access to something that maybe is more affordable. And the idea of recycling in this sense, I think is really important because like I said, bridal is inherently, not a sort of sustainable concept when it comes to wardrobe. So this is a new idea that we're talking about now. Now, bridal resale isn't anything new, but I strongly encourage it. And I don't think that there's anything taboo about it. And I do think asking the questions and educating yourself more is really, really important. And I think that also comes down to the designers educating themselves about their practices. I do also think that there's an interesting flip side to this conversation about bridal, because what's so amazing is that bridal is not like the rest of the fashion industry. Everything is made to order. It is made based on the demand. So there is not typically excess inventory, which is awesome. And which essentially means that bridal businesses probably have smaller carbon footprints and have more inherently sustainable practices because they are purely producing based on their demand. But back to Amanda's point, after the wedding, I think whether it's considering donation or considering rewearing, I know that a trend right now that I'm seeing with a lot of my bridal clients is also lots of wedding dresses not being white, being more ivory, or even being a color or a print. I mean, given the fact that we're in COVID right now, changes so much. But I think in general, this concept that people want to enjoy their clothes more, and people looking to wear separates as well, like tops and bottoms or tuxedos or, more wearable pieces throughout their wedding weekend. I know so many of the other items that Amanda had were borrowed, but had they not been, I bet you would be enjoying them. So that's something to consider as well. And I think after the fact, again, if you are not willing to donate your dress or resell your dress or remake your dress so that you can enjoy it another way, the idea hopefully is to pass it down and to treasure it within your family. So there's that as well.
Yeah, that's wonderful. And I'd also like to learn more about each of your companies. Amanda, can you tell me more about Maison De Mode? I believe you launched it just 5 years ago.
Yeah, well, actually, so 10 years ago when I started working, I had a monthly column in Marie Claire about sustainable fashion, which was like very early days in the sustainable fashion movement. And I wrote there for about 3 years. And then I did the same at Town & Country. And in that time, I met my now partner for Maison De Mode, and we initially came up with this idea of having concept pop-ups where we would showcase sustainable fashion and highlight how luxurious and beautiful and elegant it can be, sort of destigmatizing what people thought sustainable fashion was. And so when we started, we had about 6 brands that we thought were beautiful and great and strong enough to showcase. And 5 years ago is when we launched the online platform. And now we have like over 80 brands, and we have the luxury to choose and select. And there's so many amazing clothing, accessory, jewelry brands out there now that are incorporating and highlighting sustainability. So it's been a beautiful journey. And basically Maison De Mode is a retail company first and foremost, where we we support and sell sustainable fashion.
And you have, Amanda, a major announcement coming up here, don't you? You're launching a sustainable fine jewelry collection on October 5th. Congratulations.
Thank
Oh my
you.
gosh. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah. So after the wedding and after working with MICAELA and all these beautiful looks and working with such amazing vintage jewelry, it crossed my mind, like, well, there are not that many sustainable fashion jewelry brands out there. Mm-hmm. And there's a gap in the market for that. So I started doing a bit of research and came across this brand called Vray and spoke with them. And we've put together a capsule collection and that I've designed. So it's 5 pieces, 2 pairs of earrings, 2 necklaces, and a brooch that can also be a hairpiece. And yeah, so it's completely sustainable. It's made with white gold that's recycled. Mm-hmm. The diamonds are cultured, which means that they're grown. They're man-made diamonds, which also means that they're not mined. So no labor goes into it. No animals are hurt. No land is destroyed. And the company is carbon neutral. So it's a very feel-good ethos behind the jewelry. And then the pieces are literally inspired by the pieces that I wore at my wedding. So, that timeless, elegant feeling is still there, but there's also this great story behind the pieces that they're also entirely sustainable.
God, that's so exciting.
Yeah, it's been a fun journey.
And MICAELA, what have you been up to lately? Tell me what you're working on.
Well, it's funny we're talking about jewelry at the moment because I too launched a line of engagement rings with Forevermark that are exclusively set in platinum, and Forevermark diamonds also have a commitment to responsibly sourced diamonds and sustainability in their ethos and practice. So I have been busy with bridal as well. Just gearing up, for the season ahead. So many weddings have been postponed, as you know, due to COVID. So helping my clients navigate this time, and it's been interesting. But love conquers all, so we're still in it.
Yeah, well, and congratulations to you too, MICAELA.
Thank you.
So, Amanda, where shall people go to learn more about your company and the products that you have to offer?
So with my sustainable fashion company, Maison De Mode, the website is maison-de-mode.com.
It'll be in the show notes for people to find.
Yeah, because that's French, house of fashion. So that's why spelling might confuse you. And then the Vray jewelry collection that I'm going to launch on October 5th, that's going to be available on our website, but also the Vray website, which is vrai.com. So those are the both spots that you can get the jewelry. And then I have an animal welfare and conservation nonprofit called wellbeingscharity.org.
Great. Okay, we got that. And MICAELA, what about you? How can people find out about more about you and what you're offering?
So I'm MICAELAERLANGER.com. Instagram is @MICAELA. And my collection with Forevermark is available on Forevermark.com, as well as linked to my website.
Wonderful. Well, this has been a blast. This has been so much fun to hear about it. And again, I want to urge everyone to go look at the show notes because the photos are amazing, really wonderful. And so I appreciate both of you coming on the show together. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
Thank you for listening to my conversation of Amanda Hearst and MICAELA Erlanger. Information on both can be found in the show notes on your cell phone's podcast app or in the show notes at our website at theweddingbiz.com. This was such a great conversation. Please be sure to share it with your friends and colleagues and give a great review wherever you get your podcast from. Both sharing it and reviewing it helps new people find the show. And follow The Wedding Biz on Facebook and particularly Instagram at The Wedding Biz. And this week, I will not be airing the usual Wednesday episode of The Next Level, so we will return Monday of next week and have a conversation with husband and wife team, the popular gown designer Reem Aradaki, and the highly respected photographer Greg Fink, both out of Paris. So we'll catch you next Monday on The Wedding Biz.